So I'm going to show you how I mount a scope. This is a scope I'm going to be using. It's only for airsoft. The scope mount that I'm going to be using is the Novritsch one-piece scope mount, which is now a two-piece scope mount. I'll show you for why quickly. Unfortunately, this being the size it is, like so, wouldn't fit onto the scope. So I've had to cut that middle piece out to then bring that closer together so then it'll work with that particular scope. Now the first thing that I do with a scope is I will actually hold it more like a monocular, and I go out to 60 meters and adjust the front focus, and then you'll notice your crosshair is out of focus. This is when you start using this one to focus. Focus that in, keep on turning it until eventually you'll see that the crosshair starts becoming clear, as well as what you're looking at your 60 meters will still be clear. What I do after that is once it's focused, I will carry on turning this a little bit further until it goes out of focus. Then what you can do is mark it somehow, whether that be with a pen or a little bit of tape. Then I start turning it back the other way until it starts to just go out of focus. Mark that, and then where you have your two marks left, you work then into the middle and then turn that to your center point. So then it'll be in the middle of where it was just out of focus at one scale, just out of focus at the other scale. Slap it in the middle, should be perfect. Now take away whatever you want from this on what you think is a good idea or a bad idea, what you think would be handy to use, and other things that you think, what the hell is he talking about? Entirely up to you, whatever you want to do about it. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to mount the mounts. Another thing that I've found, unfortunately, with these one-piece scope mounts from Novritsch is these nuts are done like that with the holes in them to help you out, and you can put an Allen key into them and do these up using those holes instead. Unfortunately, the thread's too long on them, so I've had to cut a little bit of the thread off to then allow it so I can get an Allen key in there to then tighten it up without actually having to use a spanner. Now, unfortunately, another thing I've found with these is I've actually gone and done this as a Torx rather than an Allen key, which the only trouble is you have a cheap Torx bit and then cheap bolts, and then these don't fit in properly, which, yeah, it goes in. I'll show you a little bit closer, but it shouldn't be that floppy. So I've actually ground this one down so that then it fits in there tighter. Just one of those things, maybe I'm being a little bit too fussy, but... Right, so now we're not going to do these up tight. We want to try keeping these gaps even on both sides, not front and back, but on both sides. Well, there's two reasons for doing that. One, it'll look neater, a little bit more professional looking. The other thing is when you're trying to actually level the scope, it will help with if you've got to do any fine tuning. Right, and don't do them up tight. You literally just your fine finger like that, and that's as tight as you want to do them. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be moving this backwards and forwards depending on what scope and scope mount you've got. You may be able to slide your scope backwards and forwards in your mounts, and then the same thing with your mounts. You might want to be moving those backwards and forwards. What you can do is you'll actually get the gun and shoulder it to look through your scope. You want it to be nice and clear. The way I do it is I'll shoulder it, close my eyes, tilt my head over as though I'm going to be looking through the scope, and then open my eyes. Now, you can twist your head left and right and pivot your head. But what you don't want to be doing is moving your head forward or backwards to be seeing through that scope better. If you go and do that and you've got to move your head forwards to get a better view, undo your scope, move your scope back. If you've got to move your head back, then undo your scope, move your scope forward. Also depends on how you have your stock set up. So set your stock how you would be playing with it to then be able to look through your scope. And you just keep on doing that, get it set, try it again, do all your other scopes exactly the same, and you'll just make your whole life so much easier. Next thing you're going to be doing is actually leveling the scope. So we're going to have to maneuver onto somewhere else for doing this. Right, so try to ignore all of the background mess. I really need to have a tidy up. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to level it. I'm going to use a level like this, holding it in a vise, and then we're just going to get it so the gun is level, like so, and then we're going to put it on top of the scope, like so. And then all we'll do is we're just going to gently adjust the scope to get it to 0 as well. And double check the gun again, and then check the scope again. When we do these up, we want to do it as a crisscross pattern. So if you imagine this is the mount on top here, what we're going to do is we'll do this one up by 1/4, and then we'll come over to this one and do it up as 1/4, then go over to this one, do it up as 1/4, and then over to this one, do it up as 1/4, and then we can go back to that first one again. So put a first bit of tension on. So now what we'll do is we'll double check the gun again, because it will move about, and make sure the gun's level. Then we'll go back to the scope, and you can see the scope needs to actually twist a little bit more that way, so tightening those up actually made it come this way a little bit. But that's the whole point of having that extra little, or leaving that gap even on either side, because now that's going to allow us to tighten up these a little bit more, and maybe have to loosen these ones off just slightly, just to get that little bit of an extra twist on it. There you go, that'll do. Okay, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys.